Without your input over the years for the scrap metal industry, the iScrap app would not have been able to grow the way that it has. We've listened to your ideas, your advice, and the things that you want with the newest iScrap app coming out in the summer of 2021. With price charts, better ways for you to report prices, learn about the markets, and read different news alerts about the scrap metal industry, this app has been made for scrappers by scrappers, and we can't wait for you to use it. Hey scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, which means it's our time for our weekly report on YouTube and on Facebook. What are we going to talk about today? Market news, market updates, what you should expect at your scrapyard, and how you can make more money with your scrap. Follow me, let's go talk scrap. Have questions about scrap? Time to ask them now. Let's go. Hey scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap app, and today's Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. We hope that you are doing well, scrapping often, and we thank you for tuning in to our live update. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, or you're watching us after hours and this is not live, thank you for joining us. But make sure when you have questions, whether it's about markets, prices, predictions, ask us those questions during this feed so we can get you those answers as quickly as possible and help you continue to make more money with your scrap. Now, over the last week, we've had a lot of people becoming Patreon supporters. By becoming one, you have the ability to have more market news, more videos, and different types of content pushed to you that other scrappers don't get. Now let's jump right into the markets, where we've had a full 5 days of trading, opposed to last week where we had 4 days in between us talking because of the 4th of July holiday. Now, over the last 4 days, what has happened? Well, we've gone from Q2 into Q3, and that means that we're starting to see some different stocks, portfolios, and performances, and different gauging of where companies are in the profits that they took in the quarter two. Why is this important to us as scrappers? Well, by monitoring companies like Delta, Goldman Sachs, United Airlines, manufacturers, Alcoa, Freeport Communico, and other big dogs like Apple or Amazon, that gives us a little insight economically on how some of these companies are doing and how their users are consuming their products. Perfect example. When Apple comes out with their different markets, their different quarterly reports, they talk about iPhone sales. They talk about iPad sales. Why is that important? We look at some of those numbers not as an indicator of where the market is definitely going to be, but the more of those that are sold, that means there's more of a commodity demand for items like aluminum, the microprocessors that we're hearing about in the news non-stop right now. It has an indication on gold prices, also on different markets and different sales going forward, which will in turn affect the supply and demand. So when we look at items like aluminum, which has been, in my opinion, probably the hottest and best performing metal of 2021 to date, while the prices are not as high or as sexy as copper might be at that $4 level, aluminum prices have almost doubled this year. And having a market that's almost doubled in anything is always good news, especially when we think about the tariffs that are still in place. Now, I'm not going to go too political here, but one thing that I will point out, the Trump administration had tariffs on aluminum and steel on multiple other countries. And one very important thing to note, 5 months into the Biden administration, none of those metal tariffs have been reduced. Why is that important? That shows that with the steel prices and the aluminum prices still being as high as they are, other countries are still having to spend between 10 and 25% on tariffs to import those materials into the country. And this does not just apply to countries like China, but it applies to India, European countries, and others in the Middle East as well. Again, why are these things important? Well, if those tariffs are removed, you might even have a higher market for aluminum and steel prices as domestic manufacturers and recyclers here in the country don't have to pay those tariff rates. So it keeps their costs a little lower. And what we're really seeing with these price changes are more of a supply and demand surge than they are the prices because of the tariffs. We got a question.
We have a question, ironically, from Tom.
Oh, hey, Tom.
He said, do you think prices will significantly drop this winter, even though things have been booming in the scrap market?
You know, this is a really great question. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why I think that they could and a couple of reasons why I think that they won't. Number one, we are halfway through the year. I was listening to an economist earlier today, and he was talking about profits. And all economists have predicted that companies are going to blow out their Q1, Q2, and Q3 profits from year over year. I mean, why wouldn't they? How many planes are going to be flying for Delta or United this year compared to last year? And that's going to really change how much money they're going to make. So when we look at some of these profit structures, a lot of people have baked the stock price in or the metal prices in. Well, excuse me, what they're concerned about is moving forward, what's going to happen in quarter 3 and in quarter 4. Sorry, we have new hires today, so I've been teaching and talking all day long, and that generally drives me up a bit. I do believe that the markets are going to continue at a very strong level for the rest of 2021. Going into 2022, I think that the first half of 2022 is going to be very strong, while I think the second half of 2022, we're going to have a lot of market disruptions, and I'm not sure that we're going to see a really aggressive market like we are right now. The supply and demand right now is not really on balance, and that's going to lead to a lot of these different price surges that you're seeing. Even steel prices dropping $5 to $15 in the month of July isn't a big deal, considering the markets are still more than double where they were a year ago. So if you ask me, going from 2021 to 2022, I think that the first half of 2022 is going to be strong. I think the second half is going to start to pull back a little bit. And then you have these politicians talking about another $4 trillion in stimuluses and infrastructure plans, and we have no idea what $4 trillion looks like being injected in the economy 2 years in a row, because we already had it in 2021 and in 2022. Follow-up question.
We have another question from Kelly that is similar. Is brass going up, or is it going to stay idle?
Yeah, so brass prices have been relatively idle, and if you pay attention to the national pricing page, which is put together through reported prices, you'll see the market has been relatively unchanged with the yellow and red brass markets right now. Now, with copper having largely stabilized over the last 3 months, we're really happy to see that. And of course, with brass being between 60 and 90% copper, you want to follow those copper markets a little more close to get a better feel of the brass markets. But certain things that you want to keep in mind: copper prices have really been resilient, and there's a couple of key indicators that I'm looking at. Number one, we saw the Chinese a month and a half ago pump thousands of tons of copper into the market. And guess what they just did again? The same exact thing. Here's the difference. 2 months ago when they did it, the market went and dropped 50 cents in 1 week on the news. You probably didn't hear about the second influx of copper, but we did not see much of a drop. A penny or two drop in 1 day is a rounding error when it comes to copper prices, stock prices, or gas prices. But when you start to move into the 3 to 5 to 10% differences, that's when you have price movement, volatility, and problems, both good and both bad. Question.
We have another question that is a similar one from one of our big Facebook group members, Jason Barrett.
Jason, nice to see you on here. Thanks for joining.
He said, I've seen a sudden boost in prices in Eastern Canada, while the prices were comparable almost half during the boom in the American prices in the past year or so. Is Canada playing catch up with the demand needed in America, or another reason?
I think that is one of the many reasons. The biggest reason I would point to is that the Canadian government reacted very differently than the United States government did in 2020 to COVID. You guys have had more restrictions, less vaccinations, and because of that, you've seen your markets reacting differently. Example, you can't have inter-country commerce right now, traffic for people visiting. You know, I have a friend up in Canada that normally goes down to Disney World with his family every July, and he's not allowed to go. So while Disney and scrap are very different, they are related in the sense that the governments have performed in different ways. And the Canadian government being slightly behind, you're going to have a lot of the metal producers and a lot of the metal recycling units in Canada having a little bit of a harder time producing and manufacturing goods with different labor problems and different supply chain disruptions. So with the Canadian government open for business, but with the people being more so at home and that work from home model, we see you guys being about 6 months behind the United States, but you might want to start working with a different scrapyard because prices being half of what you should be getting is way too big of a difference. If you told me that there was a 25% difference, I would be better with that. Maybe not okay, but better, just because you guys do have different supply chain disruptions that we don't have here in the States. Questions? Ask them. We're here live. It's Wednesday, July 14th. And regardless of how many times we move the video cameras around, I'm still here to answer your questions on scrap. So let's go back into the non-ferrous markets. Copper, relatively unchanged week over week. With our new version of iScrap coming out, I got to tell you, I started testing it over the weekend on my iPhone. You guys are going to really love it. And if you don't, then we have really bad listening ears, like I tell my children, because we've been listening to you and taking your ideas and building them in. We think that it's going to be a fantastic tool for you, not only to report prices, but learn more about the markets, have quicker notifications sent to you. Overall, super great user experience. And the preview behind me is just a small glimpse into what the new iScrap app 2.0 is going to be. So we're going to post a link if you want to sign up to get notified when it gets released or new updates are coming. Let us know. You can sign up with your email through that link, or when the new app drops, you can always sign up for updates through there as well. Now, these markets going into quarter three, copper looks to be relatively steady. And one of the biggest things that we continue to look for are the oil prices. We're now having oil prices hit multi-year highs. While some economists and gas predictionists said that we were going to see $100 a barrel by the end of this year, we are now predicting that number down to the $80 to $90 per barrel range, according to 4 different groups that we study and follow. What does this mean for you? Well, higher gas prices with a national average around $3.20 right now. We are expecting those prices to rise another 30 to 40 cents by the end of the third quarter. Going into the holiday season, we might see that upticking even more. Why is that important? Well, you're going to pay more money at the pump. Yes, you're getting more money at the scrapyard, but your home heating, your fuel, your consumption, and also the fuel and consumption of the scrapyards powering large pieces of equipment. Think about a big excavator, a shear, a grapple. Well, you look at these beautiful pieces of yellow and green machinery at the scrapyards, they guzzle a lot of fuel. So when they're guzzling sometimes half a tank a day, which could be 100, 200 gallons of fuel, with those prices increasing just for day-to-day operations at the scrapyard, they're going to enjoy the higher prices to help offset. But once you start to see the market adjusting differently, you're going to start to see scrapyards making their profit margins a little wider because they're not sure where things are going to go. Well, their overhead for trucks, excavators, heating oil, and other things gas and oil related, those are going to go up, which will affect their bottom line and which will affect your scrap prices. Question?
We have a question from Devil Doc on YouTube.
Okay.
When you recycle AC compressors, what happens to them?
The AC compressors generally go into a really cool unit. Thank you for following us on YouTube. Imagine a can opener for AC compressors. There's a tool where you take it, you put it on the stand, you kind of lock it in from a couple of sides. A cutting tool starts spinning and will make a circle around that compressor. Think about cracking an egg right in half, not lengthwise, but kind of widthwise. Once they crack it off, you have the exposed copper, which is kind of like an electric motor where you're able to pull that out and then recycle the copper in whatever way fitting. We've seen different companies cutting it on both ends. We've seen some, day-to-day scrappers taking that electric motor or that yoke or something from inside those compressors or General Electric motors, put them into a vise on their bench, tightening it really well, cutting half the copper off with a really nice reciprocating saw. And on the other side, sometimes they can use a winch or they can use a crowbar where they put it in. And they're able to pull those pieces of copper out. And of course, those pieces of copper are almost always enameled, creating a number 2 copper. And when you have the sealed units or the compressors, you might have some additional leftover oil after you had it properly drained. So make sure that you have that inside some type of a bucket so you don't have oil dripping all over, creating an unsafe working environment. And we hope that answered your questions. Do we think that it's worth it? I don't know. What's your time worth? If you want to learn, then by all means, go for it. And in the coming months, we'll probably have a video coming out here from iScrap showing you how to do it with day-to-day tools, a grinder, a heavy-duty Sawzall, a vice grip, all of these different tools that you can grab and make things doing it. But number one, always work safe. Now, the steel markets, while they're relatively unchanged, down $5 to $15 a ton, still very strong. National prices that have been reported, very high, strong, aggressive markets. We're happy to see that going on. Gold, slightly over $1,800 an ounce. And let me tell you why that's important, as we do not always talk about gold on these different videos. Gold is an economic indicator. With the amount of money that the government wants to borrow from us over the next 10 to 15 years with these different infrastructure plans, they generally affect gold because gold for years has been a safe haven for investors. Why? They know that it's needed. They know that the old gold standard still has some strength to it. And also, while gold isn't bet as highly as it used to be because it was used so heavy in electronics, the value of gold is still there, whether it's intrinsic or it's just more societal. That value is there. And when people are worried about the markets, whether it's the US government printing more money, taking out more loans, all of these things matter. So having gold at strong levels is going to be really important. Maybe you're not trading it, but you do want to watch it. Every day through the iScrap app on the national page, I always like to look at some different prices. On the new app that's coming out, the 2.0 version, gold will be one of the options that you're going to eventually be able to favorite, and you're going to be able to track some of these things as economic indicators because it's going to help you learn where the markets are. Maybe you're not selling your gold bars that you use as doorstops, but you might be learning about where the markets are, and it'll just give you a better perspective into the markets overall. Now, on the catalytic converter side of things, we've been following these markets super close, and I'm looking at some prices right now. Just the other day on Friday, we saw the rhodium markets bottom out around $16,000 an ounce, only to rebound over the last 3 business days to almost $19,000 an ounce. Why is that important? Well, that's a 17 to 20% price fluctuation over just a few day period, which shows how volatile the metal is. And with rhodium being used 80% of the time in catalytic converters, there's not much other movement for the rhodium markets to take because there aren't multiple uses. So the catalytic converter market is so heavily reliant on rhodium and rhodium on catalytic converters that we watch these markets very closely. Now, over at rrcats.com, you know that we're not only a part of it, but actively promoting and making sure that you know how transparent the team over there is. With market prices updated daily for palladium, platinum, rhodium, and dozens of other grades of catalytic converters, the team at rrcats.com will give you the ability to track markets in a different way than you've seen before, and will, of course, help you make more money with your scrap catalytic converters. Now, we watched markets like palladium and platinum moving 5% over the last few days, which are strong indicators. But one thing that I've really been able to pull out of the markets right now, they don't have a real direction. They're so confused because companies' profits are all bigger than they were last year because COVID hit, and other companies that have not recovered as swiftly, like the travel and entertainment sector, their profits are expected to be really big when they come out because they were really small, if not negative, last year. And these are going to be different indicating factors that change markets. And things like that are going to really affect the markets overall. We have one last question that we'd like to talk about.
Yep, we have a question from Chris over on YouTube.
Hey, Chris.
He asks, do you guys take clean plated zinc brass as yellow brass or pay the same for it? Some do, but there's some confusion with a new yard here.
Sure. So there's a couple of things that you need to look for, and that is an awesome question. We've made a video on this before, and you really want to look out for it. Clean yellow brass off of sinks is almost always just going to be a yellow brass price. There's not going to be a special upgrade. The only time that there would be an upgrade is in the rare scenarios where you have red brass, but generally chrome-plated yellow brass is not going to fetch a higher price. Now, here's where your new yard could be doing things and not explaining them correctly or as transparently as we would here at the iScrap app. A lot of the new sinks, when you look at them, are not brass. They are die cast or zinc or possibly plastic. The inner guts are going to be brass, but you're going to need your handy dandy file to scratch the outside silver part and see what color pops up inside. At Rockaway Recycling, our sister company, our scrapyard, our scale operators always do this because of the growing amount of Chinese sinks that are made of plastic or die cast that are coming in because, well, they look the same, they operate the same, and they're cheaper. So you're going to want to test it with a file. If it's brass, you might want to talk to your scrapyard or ask them what qualifies as clean and dirty, and that might help you as well. I said we had no more questions, but we got one more, so let's do it.
Jerry on YouTube asked, can you clean out your cats and make more money?
Oh, no, that's a horrible idea. One of the worst things that you could do is cut the material out of the catalytic converters after you cut the cat off of the cars that you own. Why? Well, all of the honeycomb, whether it's ceramic or foil material or DPF filtered, always looks very close. Now, if I had a brick that came out of a cat, how do I know it's out of that cat, even if it fits inside of the shield? So rrcats.com, we want to buy the whole cat with the shield, the pipes attached, the brick inside, pictures from both sides. This way we know that that material came from that cat and we can quote it correctly. Once you break material up, remove it from a catalytic converter, you would have material from a $500 cat look the same as material from an aftermarket cat. The colors could even be spot on. Why does that matter? Well, if an aftermarket's worth $25 and an OEM Honda is worth $500, and you take the material out and they both weigh 4 or 5 pounds, one's going to be worth more than the other, but from the naked eye, you don't know which. So the team at rrcats.com, as do many other catalytic converter buyers, will buy it on a per pound basis, knowing that as a buyer, we have a much greater upside than the seller would, but we also have a much greater downside than the seller would. You know, a seller trying to sell that loose material, if you can find someone that's going to buy it for a really strong price or trust that you pulled it out of the cat, good for you. But for the transparency, you're going to want to leave it inside, show pictures of the cat before on both sides. This way you don't take anything out. And if you're working with rrcats.com, almost all of the tickets that we're quoting out are getting free shipping. So it doesn't matter what it looks like or what it weighs, just don't take it apart. Now, Scrappers, this is Tom from the iScrap app, and today's Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. Thank you for all of you that ask questions during the week. We hope that you tune in every week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern. We try to go live on YouTube and on Facebook. If you're looking for more catalytic converter information, go to rrcats.com. If you're looking to get notifications when this new 2.0 drops, please make sure you subscribe to our mailing list or ask us where you can, and we'll let you know when the new iScrap app is coming out. Until next week, Scrappers, scrap soon, stay healthy, and I'll scrap you later.